My name is Dr. April Brooks. I'm the principal at Johnson Traditional Middle School, where everybody is somebody. This is my 17th year in education and my 3rd year as principal here at Johnson. I think when you talk about race, oftentimes people will muddle talking about race with calling people a racist. And I think that it's very important to make sure that you understand when you talk about race that we all have implicit bias, right? And it's important for us to really emphasize the work because we need to understand our bias so that we can reach all students. And so oftentimes when you get into race, it also becomes very personal because it makes you think about your own life and what experiences you've had with, whatever race you are, or episodes with racism that you've been a part of. And so that can bring up a lot of feelings of hurt, pain, hatred, particularly now with the climate in Louisville. I think that it's even more strong that people are feeling that there's definitely a divide. You can talk about race, you can talk about poverty, but when you get down to it, when you start talking about poverty, you see even though whites and African Americans are both in poverty, when you look at students, you still see more of a decrease in academic achievement for Black students, whether they're in poverty or not. And so that really is eye-opening to see race, that the data really shows that there's a lot of there is a big divide between African American students and their white counterparts. And that if we don't talk about race, that divide will continue to grow. And it's our job as change agents, I really believe in social change, that we as educators have to be those change agents. And if we don't talk about race, all we're doing is tiptoeing around a major divide in education, which is causing African American students to be behind, not just in Louisville, not just in Kentucky, but nationally. This is a problem, and I think the time is now. The most rewarding part of it is when you start talking about race and you see trends in your own data, and your staff begins to tackle those trends and say, hey, we're going to do something about this data. We're going to change this data. So one thing at my school is we really wanted to lower suspensions for African American students. So my first year we did that. We lowered suspensions by 50%. And so when you start talking about this work and you start seeing outcomes, that to me is the most important thing. And so now we're looking at the academic data and how we can support all of our students so that they're achieving at high levels. Currently, Johnson is a 3-star school, but if you look at all our students' scores, they're not all achieving at the same level. And so my goal is to have that reward to say all students are reading, at high levels, no matter their race or their gender. And so I think it's very important to talk about this work because when you see those outcomes, it's a win for all of us. Well, I think it starts with the racial equity plans and make sure that you're communicating those to your staff. And so oftentimes we'll write a plan and then it just kind of sits on a shelf, right? It's our job to work the plan. So once we write it down, all the stakeholders need to be aware of it. And that includes not only our staff members, our teachers, but also it includes our parents. They need to know the goals as far as racial equity is concerned. I think it's even more positive that we have an entire department that is focused on that. So we have another resource to talk to resource teachers at DEP and help us grow in these areas. And so we have the ARE tool. There's so much at our fingertips and at our disposal to use so that we can improve outcomes for our school. I think it goes even further with the empty document and being able to have that evidence attached to what's important in our racial equity plan. Because I think taking that time to look at that, not only with my administrative team, but also with my instructional leadership team, that we're able to make decisions not only with our instruction, but also with our budget as well. And so I've always heard that, what you put your money in is what you value. So we really looked at our text in our library and our English department. Do our students see themselves in what they're reading every day? And so then we were able to take that to the SPDM. So you have to make sure that you look at all facets of your school and make sure that equity is woven through every department, that it's woven through every initiative. And that also helps when you read those policies with the SPDM as well. So we have a racial equity committee, and so they were really focused on doing a lot of the equity work. And we said, we really want to expand that this year with not only having a parent on our racial equity committee, but also to have students, because oftentimes the student voice is left out. And I think that's highly important that we know what they want. And I think that the DEP department has done a great job now making sure that every school has a BSU. So we've also opened up that opportunity for Johnson students. So we have our first student BSU, and we are going to continue not only to share our racial equity plan, but also divide that work so that all staff members feel like that they are aligned and ready to work on a more culturally relevant teaching practices, which is CRT. Also, that we're looking at our curriculum, making sure that we're not telling lies. It's not our job to distort history, and that we're being truthful and honest in what we're teaching students, and that we're getting beyond just slavery. Students should walk away in the social studies curriculum being able to think about issues in social justice, be able to be critical thinkers, and also use that inquiry-based learning. So to make this more succinct, we're looking at our curriculum, we're looking at our equity committee, and also student voice for our students so that they feel like that they have a role in the policies and structures of our school. That actually is a hot topic right now. I have had some parents who were concerned about the social studies curriculum. And so what we did is that we sat down with them and had a conference, an administrator, also that teacher, and also the parent, and we explained why this work was important and how we have to be honest about telling what's going on in history, and also that we're not influencing the students' thinking. We're just allowing them to have a forum to talk about issues that are relevant, not only in our city, but in our state and also nationally. And so it's not our job to muddle the water, but it is our job to make sure that we articulate things that are going on that do promote systemic racism. And we talk about the equity pillar and how important that is in our racial equity plan, and how we have to be open and honest with students if we're going to move our district forward. And I think it's important when it comes from the top, parents understand that this is something that's not only important to like my school, Johnson Traditional, but it's important to our district as a whole. I wrote my dissertation on racial equity, so this has always been something that is very important to me. But I feel even more valued that my district is putting emphasis on racial equity. And so to be a part of a school district that not only promotes it, but also wants to make sure that we emphasize it at every school, right? And that not only do we look at budgeting and curriculum, but also in our hiring practices. And so I think it's highly important for my students to see an African-American female principal. I always talk to my students about education and how important that is. So I think my role as a principal, I feel empowered to do this work. And that's highly important because you need to be supported, because this work is difficult. It's not easy. It takes time. You have to change people's mindset. People have to have a growth mindset about it, that we don't know everything and that we're in this together. But it makes me feel good because my students also attend JCPS. And so I know that not only am I serving students to have a very equitable experience, that my own children will have that experience no matter what school they go to.